Garden Basics with Farmer Fred is brought to you by Smart Pots, the original lightweight, long-lasting fabric plant container. It's made in the USA. Visit smartpots.com/Fred for more information and a special discount. That's smartpots.com/Fred. Welcome to the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast. If you're just a beginning gardener or you want good gardening information, well, you've come to the right spot. We're at the time of the year to start pepper seeds indoors. Pepper seeds, though, can be notoriously slow to germinate, sometimes taking up to 3 weeks. We have tips to speed up that pepper seed germination, and we get a little help from America's favorite retired college horticultural professor, Debbie Flower. Have you heard of Coppicing? It's a drastic pruning technique where some woody plants are cut back close to ground level in order to stimulate the growth of vigorous new shoots. I happened upon a demonstration of coppicing in a perennial garden recently, and I found out the answer to the question, what the heck is coppicing? We have the details. It's all in episode 309 of Garden Basics, Pepper Seed Starting Tips, and Coppicing of Woody Ornamental Plants. We're podcasting from Barking Dog Studios here in the beautiful Abutilon Jungle in suburban Purgatory. It's the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast, brought to you today by Smart Pots and Dave Wilson Nursery. Let's go. We like to answer your questions here on the Garden Basics podcast. You can leave a question with us at speakpipe.com/gardenbasics. You can call or text us the question at 916-292-8964. You can fill out the contact box at gardenbasics.net. You can email it to Fred at farmerfred.com. Or in the case of Grace and Terry, you yell at the editors of the Lodi News Sentinel newspaper, and then they will yell at me. I've been writing a garden column for that paper since, I believe, 1991. And there was a thing in the paper last week that Grace and Terry found, and I saw that, and I go, wow, I've been saying this for like 25 years now, and nobody's corrected it except for Grace and Terry. Well, it's corrected now. Grace and Terry ask, you wrote in your Things to Do in the Garden column that you should start pepper from seed now. Are you speaking of starting in pots in a climate-controlled situation, or go ahead and sow seeds in the garden? You are right, Grace and Terry. I left out the word indoors. And now I have changed both the copy and my brain to say to people, yeah, now's the time to start peppers indoors from seed. A lot of good reasons to start peppers from seed. And I think the best reason is the wide variety of sweet peppers and hot peppers that you can choose from in seed versus what you might find at the nursery.
Absolutely true. Yes.
There's just so much more. Now, the trick, though, is getting those pepper seeds to germinate indoors, where it could take 3 weeks.
Yeah, it can take a very long time for peppers to germinate from seed.
You have ways.
Yeah, when I was teaching, the students would start tomatoes and peppers and other things from seed, and we would come right out the gate we had to work within a semester, and the semester started in about mid to end January. We would start right out the gate after, lab safety and all that stuff, starting seeds of peppers, because they do take such a long time to grow to a saleable size. And we would have a plant sale, and that's the purpose of our starting our tomatoes and peppers from seed. And they took a long time, and we had limited greenhouse space. So I started researching, and I found lots of different possible ways to speed up the germination of peppers. And the one I tried was soaking the pepper seeds in hydrogen peroxide for 10 minutes before planting.
Now, I wouldn't think that would be enough time to crack the seed coat.
And it wouldn't crack it necessarily, but it would penetrate it. And once the liquid gets inside, the purpose of cracking the seed coat is so that water can get inside the seed. There's inside a seed is a baby plant, a perfectly formed baby plant. It has a growing bud and seedling leaves and roots and a source of food to live on until it can get big enough to make food from the light it's exposed to. But it sits there dormant until it gets wet. And once it gets wet, chemicals start forming and action starts to begin. And so getting liquid into inside the seed coat is what's needed to get seed germination started. And I don't know, hydrogen peroxide is water plus an oxygen. It's H2O2, 2 hydrogen and 2 oxygen. And why that works to go through the pepper seed, I don't know. But we got very uniform germination of pepper seed and fairly quickly for a pepper.
One thing I would think it would do would be to disinfect those seeds if there was any diseases lurking around.
Well, that's
the seeds.
a possibility, yes. But typically these were seeds purchased from reputable seed companies, and I would expect that they did not have disease on the outside, but you never know.
And you never know what variety those seeds are really, as we found out last year.
Last year was a faux pas year for that.
Jalapeno gate, I believe the phrase was, when there was a big mix-up in seeds. People had bought either seeds or plants that were grown from those seeds that were allegedly jalapeno, and they turned out to be sweet peppers. And then there was a sweet pepper variety that turned out to be a jalapeno.
Companies don't just have one seed production facility, but I toured one once. They always kept a certain part of the harvest of those seeds and grew them themselves. Of course, by that time, the seeds were packed and sent out for sale, but just so that they knew what they were truly selling.
I have yet to hear anybody take the blame for that, by the way.
They've been fired.
I don't know. I mean, I had a problem with a tomato variety last year that it wasn't what it said it was. Mm-hmm. It wasn't Gardener's Delight. It was some other cherry tomato. And Gardener's Delight, one of my favorites. Anyway, with pepper seeds, yeah, they do need that scarification, it's called.
Right.
To use a big word, which basically just means to scar the coat of the seed.
And get that water into the inside, yes.
And the other thing that a lot of people agree on as far as getting those seeds off to a better start is warm up that soil with a propagation mat, a heating pad.
Right. And that's really crucial. You don't have to heat the whole greenhouse or garage or wherever it is that you're starting these seeds, but the root zone, the soil media that you're using to start the seeds in does need to be warm enough for those seeds to germinate. And we're talking, won't be a temperature that you can feel with your hand. It won't feel warm to your hand, but it will be warm enough for the seeds to germinate.
The heating pad you're referring
to. Right.
The soil, even though you can't feel it, the soil could be 80 degrees, which is, I think, the ideal temperature for pepper seed germination.
Mm-hmm. Yes. The other thing to watch when you're using a heating pad under your plant seedlings is that they will dry out very quickly. And once a seed germinates, once it gets wet and those chemical action starts, if it dries out, it's dead and you cannot recover it. So you need to be right on top of all the watering.
And it can't be forceful water. It can't be from your standard garden bucket either. And you go to great lengths to make sure that they get drizzled on very slowly and lightly. Right.
Because if you don't, then the seeds come flying out of the top of the container and you don't even know it because they're so small you can't see them.
It's like a 1,000 hole head that you have on your hose end sprayer that
I turn upside down so the water flies up first and then it comes down like rain.
And that way the soil the seed is not disturbed from its little home in the soil.
They do make nozzles that are misting nozzles. Mm-hmm. I'm too impatient. Misting nozzles do what they say. They produce a mist at the end of the hose, but it's so slow you really want to soak that media and have water go all the way through the media and out the bottom. That way you know that the air holes have been filled with water and you've got a good saturation of the soil and then a good drainage of the soil. You know if everything's wet. With a misting nozzle, it takes forever.
But if you're just doing enough for your garden, that isn't that long a process.
Right. And maybe other people are more patient than I.
Okay. Here's how I got around that. I tried the 1,000-hole hose end sprayer thing. Mm-hmm. And that means, okay, I got to drag the hose into the greenhouse and water it all and be sure you don't hit anything else. So I went to the hardware store and I bought a 1-gallon pump sprayer.
Oh.
Which has a hose, a nozzle with a head that's bent at 45 degrees, and you can turn that head to a stream or a fine spray. Mm-hmm. And that's what I have in the greenhouse now. It's just this 1-gallon pump sprayer. I pump it up and start spraying the tops of my little babies and get them evenly moist.
And I hope you wrote water only on the tank.
Well, I'm the only one out there.
Okay.
So, yeah, you're right. Exactly. If you have several, you want to mark that water.
Right.
And, yeah, you don't want to mix that up. That happened to a nursery. I think it was in Hawaii where they thought they were spraying water. Turns out they were spraying glyphosate. Yeah. You don't.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Especially on new babies like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a fine spray of water, get out there and do it regularly. And then I think of the best garden tip that I've learned over the last 2 years is once those little plants, those little pepper plants, or even the little tomato plants, when those little pepper plants get to be 2-3 inches tall, once they get maybe 2 or 3 sets of true leaves on them, is to transplant them into slightly larger containers. So I go from doing something that has maybe a volume of 2 inches by 1 inch into a 3-inch pot and let them grow out without keeping the roots cramped.
Right.
The roots are free to grow in a 3-inch pot until the time that it's time to put them out in the garden, which could be 8 to 10 weeks later. And that's why you're starting pepper seeds in late January or early February if you want to set them out in May.
Right. Yes.
And you do want to set them out in May.
Yes. The soil outdoors also needs to be very warm, not just the seed starting soil.
Yeah, but even for that young plant as well. Like I said, there's a lot of good pepper varieties to choose from that you won't find in plant form. And unfortunately, I think in the case of a lot of nurseries, they get some of their best selections of pepper plants and tomato plants way too early in the season. And if you're that shopper, if you go to the nursery in February and all of a sudden you're seeing pepper plants and tomato plants and you say, I better get these plants because they may not get that variety in again, don't put it in the garden.
No. Like you said, put it in the next size pot. Let it grow on in that container.
Yeah, in a place that's protected from too much sun. And if it's going to be really cold that night, maybe below, 40 degrees.
I would have said, 45 maybe, yeah.
Bring them in for the night.
Right.
Bring them inside.
Which can be a lot of work. You got to be on top of it. Bring them in, put them out. Bring them in, put them out. When you're looking at types, different names of peppers, some will say AAS on the seed packet or in the catalog. And that stands for All America Selection. There's also flowers that you will see, flower seed packets, or sometimes if they're selling the plant, it will say that on the tag as well. And an All America Selection is a flower or vegetable that has been trialed. It's been bred by somebody somewhere, and they've decided it is much better than anything else that is out there. And they want the All-America Selection designation, and so it is trialed at gardens all over the country, all over the U.S. I know there's one at Iowa State University. I've seen their AAS selection garden. I've seen one at Clackamas Community College in Oregon. So those are the only two I'm aware of, but they're all over the country. So it's not just a plant that will do well in your little town possibly, but all over the country. And it has something about it that is superior to the others of that type. We're talking peppers here, so the other peppers that you could choose. So they're worth having a second look at. They are hybrids, meaning that they were bred from parent plants, and if you save seed from them, actually 3/4 of what you plant will not look like what you had the year before.
Yeah, the AAS winners, like you said, are trialed and judged throughout the country, and they have national winners, but they also have regional winners too, where maybe it was the judges in the Midwest who said, hey, this did really well here. Well, if they're the only ones, then it's a Midwest favorite. But there are a lot of national winners, and over the years, when in doubt, choose an AAS winner because you're probably going to get good results from it. And the ones I've tried over the years that were AAS winners were Giant Marconi, Gypsy, Tequila, which is one of my favorites. It's a beautiful, aromatic purple sweet bell pepper. It's just gorgeous. Cornito Giallo, which is sort of a banana-shaped pepper, did really well for me last year. And if you like a little bit of heat, some of the AAS winners included Mariachi and Hot Sunset. There was one last year called San Joaquin, which is the county to the south of us here, noted for its heat.
Oh, so the pepper was noted for its heat as well as the county.
Yes, and it was hot. Right. And basically, you start off with heat. You start off with light.
Yes.
You need the light. Once they're up, they need light. So if you're going to do it indoors, you may want to get an alternate lighting system if you don't have a really sunny window. And the problem with a really sunny window, too, is you're going to have to keep rotating the plants every day a quarter turn.
Grow toward the window, right. Having an overhead light system is a good idea. And they need wind. Yep. They need movement.
How do you know when they're ready to go? Let the soil temperature tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And nighttime temperature should be in what range?
55 or above for a pepper.
For air temperature.
Yes, okay. Air temperature. Right. Night temperatures reflect soil temperatures.
So those nighttime temperatures have to be steadily above 55.
Yes.
And I know even here in USDA Zone 9, that might not be till May.
Right.
Easily.
We're so dry that the heat is not held. There are moister places that might, I don't know where that would be though, maybe Florida, be able to plant sooner in the year.
And I know there's a lot of people yelling at their phones right now saying, what do you mean? I plant my peppers in early April. They're alive. Barely. They're surviving. They're not thriving.
And there is some evidence that they will be delayed. Their flowering and fruiting will be delayed if they are in that cold situation in spring for a long time.
All right. So when it comes time to plant these peppers, how deep should you plant them?
Well, in general, the rule when you plant something from a container into the field is that you should plant it at the same level or plant proud, meaning some of the media of the container plant is above the level of the field soil. But there are exceptions to that, and peppers are one of those exceptions. You can bury the stem of a pepper up to a couple of inches deeper than it was in the container, and what will happen is roots will arise from that stem, and it will make the plant stronger ultimately.
Do you have to strip off the leaves first?
I don't.
Okay.
There are references that say you have to, but I don't. I just leave them on.
So I tell you what, folks, you try it your way. Try it both ways. See which works best.
Right.
There you go. That's how you get peppers going. And mid to late winter is the time to pick out the seeds and start planting.
Yeah. Enjoy those seed catalogs.
Thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome, Fred.
For over a year now, I've been making some of the best compost I've ever had in a Smart Pot compost sack. The end result is a beautiful compost called leaf mold, and it's made from fallen oak leaves. And the best part of all, it's easy. With the Smart Pot compost sack, all I'm doing is running over those fallen oak leaves with a mulching mower and then loading those shredded leaves into the 100-gallon Smart Pot compost sack. It's a fabric bag from the folks at Smart Pots that's lightweight yet extremely durable and lasts for years. It can hold 12 cubic feet of pure compost. This rugged fabric is entirely porous, containing many micropores that allows for air circulation and drainage. It has a fitted cover, too. It's a flexible plastic top that's designed to increase heat and help manage moisture in the mix, accelerating the compost process. And all you have to do in the meantime is wait. Load the Smart Pot compost sack in the fall, and the following year, you've got some truly great compost to add to your garden bed. It's really gardener's gold. It's easy to start a compost pile with the Smart Pot compost sack. Open the sack, put it on level ground, and start adding your compostable materials like grass clippings, vegetable peelings, coffee grounds, and more, like oak leaves. And you can also add straw or shredded paper. Next, place the optional cover over the sack. That's all there is to it. And if you want even faster results, get a second Smart Pot compost sack and shovel the contents of one into the other, adding a bit of organic fertilizer that has nitrogen. The more often you do that, the quicker you're going to get a finished compost. Smart Pots, they're available at independent garden centers and select Ace and True Value hardware stores nationwide. You can find the location nearest you at their website, smartpots.com/Fred. And when you visit their website at smartpots.com/Fred, you can buy the Smart Pots online. Just visit smartpots.com/Fred, and don't forget that /Fred part, because on that page are details about how, for a limited time, you can get 10% off your Smart Pot order by using the coupon code FRED, F-R-E-D, at checkout. It's from the Smart Pot store. Visit smartpots.com/Fred for more information about the complete line of Smart Pot's lightweight, colorful, award-winning fabric containers and their latest, the compost sack. It's Smart Pots, the original award-winning fabric planter. Go to smartpots.com/Fred. It's midwinter here at the Fair Oaks Horticulture Center, and just like any place that has a lot of plants, sometimes they get overgrown and get out of bounds. Now, a lot of us would just say, okay, well, let's trim a little bit here and a little bit there. Let's just get it out of the walkway. Is there a better way to rejuvenate a plant? Yes, there is. It's called coppicing. What the heck is that? That is our question for Karen Bjork, Sacramento County Master Gardener. Coppicing, Karen, is, well, you tell us, what is coppicing?
Basically, the word means cutting, but it's a certain way of cutting a plant down to either the ground or close to the ground.
So you're just leaving what I would call a stump, but you have a more formal name for it.
I do. It's a stool.
Okay, and it would look like a stool.
Yes, yes.
What plants take well to that, and why would you coppice?
Willows.
Obviously, this plant right here.
Little John bottle brush, and it took really well. It took very good about 5-6 years ago when it was way too wide and way too high, and a couple of master gardeners coppiced it, and it looked awful. We coppiced down to probably trunks that were maybe 2-3 inches wide. So it's really bare and ugly. We have about 4 or 5 of them, and that they have a lot of hidden buds, and they're called adventitious buds. And when we coppice, we're taking off the hormone from the tip of the plant that wants it to grow up. And so all these hidden buds are inspired to sprout. Well, they sprout a lot. We call it a witch's broom because it's basically a heading cut. And that means there are a lot of sprouts, a lot of nice juvenile sprouts, and there's too many. And so we would have to thin them out so that they would turn into mature branches. And now are about maybe a foot or 8 inches, and now it's looking great.
It's about 3.5 feet tall and full and lush, and I imagine you could do coppicing with a plant that's getting kind of lanky looking or just gawky looking, and you do that coppice cut near the base, 6 inches or so above, and it doesn't matter. You don't have to leave side shoots on this. You're just basically leaving a stump, and it comes back more fuller.
It does, but it's going to be coming back too full, so you will have to thin out some of those immature branches. They're called juvenile branches.
How many did you take off? For instance, on this bottle brush here, when you cut back to a stump, how many new branches emerged and how many did you keep?
I don't remember that, but we did do some side branches that were very old, immature, or they were very mature. So I don't remember.
Typically, how many would you leave? Like 2 or 3?
I would probably leave the main trunk, cut that down, and then maybe a couple side branches that were pretty mature.
A couple side branches.
Yeah, but they would be limbs, more side limbs.
So it's not a matter of keeping the strongest growing ones?
Well, you certainly don't want to keep anything weak. So you're going to be pruning all the weak stuff off.
You know, what I find interesting is you're doing it in midwinter. Now, in my brain, I would think that making a major cut like that, you'd want to do it when the plant is actively growing in the spring. Why do you do it in the winter?
We do it in about February. And so it's going to be actively growing because in our area, spring doesn't start on March 21st or whatever. It starts way before that. And we're getting new growth on things earlier than that.
So for people listening in other zones, basically you want to make the coppicing cut then on the verge of whenever your last frost date is, like a little afterwards. What you don't want is that new growth and then a frost.
This is over my head right now. I don't know.
But basically, it does make a plant look much nicer. It's going to take, like you say, probably a year for it to start looking presentable again.
Actually, it was faster than that. Yeah. It looked smaller, but it looked nice after a few months. Yeah.
Karen, you were telling me that coppicing's been around a long, long time, that it was very popular among Native Americans.
Yes. In California, they used coppicing a lot. And if you've ever wondered how they got their arrows so straight, that was through coppicing. And the different tribes in different areas had probably different plants that they used. But gooseberry and spice bush were two of them that they used for making arrows. When the plant got mature enough, they would coppice it, and they would get all these shoots coming up, and they would be pretty straight. And they probably use maybe 2 or 3 years before they would actually make the arrow. I don't know. I'm just trying to tell you the concept of it. The willow is very easy to coppice, and of course they used a lot of willow for basket making and fish nets and lots. I mean, things that I can't make a list of them, but it's so interesting.
I know with willow, a lot of early American settlers would cut the branches off willow trees, stick them in the ground about 6 inches apart where they wanted a fence line, and because of the hormones in those branches, they would grow roots and thrive.
Yeah, they also used a lot of coppicing in England, and they coppiced for firewood, and they also coppiced for carpentry. And one of the things that I read about was that they actually used some of that for shipbuilding to get those really nice boards. Don't know how they did it.
Any plants you should avoid coppicing?
Yeah, lavender.
Okay, why is that? Because it won't sprout?
Lavender doesn't have the adventitious buds in its woody parts. So you need to prune lavender down to where it's still sprouting.
All right. So you're just basically pruning off green wood and not the gnarled looking wood.
Oh, the gnarled wood. That would be totally dead.
Yes. All right. Well, that's good advice for a lot of plants like that don't, as you say, produce adventitious buds.
Pine's another one.
That you wouldn't want to do?
Yeah.
Well, probably any pine.
Probably.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you go. I mean, that sure makes pruning a lot easier. You know, if you're staring at a plant that's overgrown and you go, well, I take a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. Why not just take your one-handed chainsaw, your little mini handsaw, and cut it off near the base, a few inches above the soil line, and stand back and watch it grow?
By the way, it should be a plant that's been in the ground for 3 years or so. Established plant.
That's good to know. Yeah, because all young plants, like teenagers, are gawky.
Sure.
Hey, we've learned something. We've learned a new term, coppicing. And I do it all the time, not knowing what I was doing. But then what else is new? Karen Bjork, Sacramento County Master Gardener, thanks for teaching us about coppicing.
Thank you.
You have a small yard and you think you don't have the room for fruit trees? Well, maybe you better think again, because Dave Wilson Nursery wants to show you how to grow great tasting fruits like peaches, apples, pluots, and nut trees. Plus, they have potted fruits such as blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, boysenberries, figs, grapes, hops, kiwi, olives, and pomegranates. These are all plants that you can grow in small areas. You can even grow many of them in containers on patios as well. It's called Backyard Orchard Culture, and you can get step-by-step information via the Dave Wilson YouTube videos. So where do you find those? Well, just go to davewilson.com, click on the Home Garden tab at the top of the page. Also in that Home Garden tab, you're going to find a link to their fruit and nut harvest chart. You can be picking delicious, healthy fruits from your own yard from May to December here in USDA Zone 9. And something else you're going to find in that Home Garden tab. You're going to find the closest nursery to you that carries Dave Wilson's quality fruit trees, and they're in nurseries from coast to coast. So start the backyard orchard of your dreams at davewilson.com. Garden Basics with Farmer Fred comes out every Tuesday and Friday, and it's brought to you by Smart Pots and Dave Wilson Nursery. Garden Basics, it's available wherever podcasts are handed out. For more information about the podcast, visit our website, gardenbasics.net, and that's where you can find out about the free Garden Basics newsletter, Beyond the Basics. And thank you so much for listening.